History remembers her love, but it was her unyielding thirst for vengeance that wrote the most brutal chapter of the Roman Empire. We often hear tales of emperors and their conquests, but what about the empresses who shaped destinies from behind the throne? Today, we delve into a story not of romance, but of ruthless retribution, a story of a woman whose grief ignited a fire that consumed thousands. This is the tale of the woman who demanded a massacre. Our story begins not in Rome, but in the chaotic landscape of the 5th century Western Roman Empire, an empire teetering on the brink of collapse. Its last emperor, Romulus Augustulus, was just a boy, a puppet on a throne controlled by his father, the powerful Roman general Orestes, and by Orestes' side was his wife, a woman whose name has been largely lost to the annals of history, but whose actions sent shockwaves through the empire. Let's call her Barbaria, a name some historical sources suggest, reflecting her non-Roman, possibly Germanic origins. She was a mother, a wife, and the unseen empress of a dying world. Life at court in Ravenna was a gilded cage. While her son played Emperor Barbaria and Orestes held the real power, they navigated a treacherous world of political intrigue, barbarian threats, and a restless army. The soldiers, mostly Germanic mercenaries, were the backbone of Rome's defense, but they were growing discontent. They had fought for Rome, bled for Rome, and now they demanded their reward, a third of the land in Italy. Orestes, a Roman traditionalist to the core, refused. Giving away Italian land to barbarian soldiers was unthinkable. It was a betrayal of everything Rome stood for. He underestimated their resolve, seeing them as mere employees rather than a unified force with its own ambitions. His decision was a fatal miscalculation. He believed he had the loyalty of his men, but he had misjudged the desperation and ambition of their leader, a formidable Germanic chieftain named Odoacer. The refusal was the spark that lit the powder keg. The mercenary army, feeling betrayed, renounced their allegiance to Rome and declared Odoacer their king. The rebellion was swift and brutal. Odoacer marched on the centers of Roman power. The once mighty legions of Rome were no match for the fury of their former comrades. Orestes was captured in the city of Placentia. He was not given a trial or a chance to negotiate. He was executed on the spot. A swift and public end for the man who was, in all but name, the last Roman ruler. The news of her husband's death reached Barbaria like a physical blow. Her world shattered. Her husband, the master of soldiers, was gone. Her son, the emperor, was now a defenseless child in a hostile world. Grief quickly curdled into a burning, all-consuming rage. The man who had taken everything from her, Odoacer, was now marching towards the capital, Ravenna. Her son, Romulus Augustulus, was all she had left, the last symbol of their family's power and the legacy of Rome. She knew Odoacer would come for him next. In her despair, Barbaria made a fateful decision. She saw only one path forward: vengeance. She looked not to the remaining Roman loyalists, who were few and scattered, but to another powerful barbarian force, the Rugians, led by their king Philethius. The Rugians were rivals of Odoacer, and Barbaria saw an opportunity to use their ambition for her own ends. She sent a desperate plea, not for sanctuary, but for an alliance built on blood. The message she sent was clear and chilling. She promised the Rugians land, gold, and power if they would help her destroy Odoacer and his followers. But her request went further. It wasn't just about defeating an army, it was about extermination. She demanded a massacre. She wanted every man, woman, and child associated with Odoacer's faction to be wiped out. She wanted to erase them from the earth, to salt the ground where they had stood. It was a demand born of pure, undiluted hatred. Her grief had transformed her from a political figure into an angel of vengeance. King Philethius and the Rugians, enticed by the promise of riches and the chance to eliminate a rival, agreed. They saw this not as an act of monstrous cruelty, but as a strategic opportunity. An alliance was forged in the fires of Barbaria's rage. The stage was set for a bloody civil war, a conflict that would pit barbarian against barbarian on Italian soil, all orchestrated by the widow of a fallen Roman general. The fate of Italy now hung on the outcome of a personal vendetta. The combined forces of the Rugians and the remnants of Orestes' loyalists prepared for war. The plan was to launch a surprise attack, to catch Odoacer's forces off guard and carry out the massacre Barbaria had demanded. But Odoacer was a cunning and experienced leader. His network of spies was extensive, and word of the impending attack reached him. He knew he couldn't wait for the storm to break. He had to strike first. Odoacer marshaled his forces and marched north to confront the Rugians before they could even cross into Italy. The clash was inevitable and decisive. On the banks of the Danube River, the two armies met in a brutal confrontation. Odoacer's seasoned warriors, fresh from their victory over the Roman establishment, were a formidable force. They fought with the ferocity of men defending their newly won kingdom. The battle was a disaster for the Rugians. King Philethius was captured and executed, his army scattered to the winds. Odoacer had not only defended his kingdom but had also eliminated a major rival. Barbaria's grand plan for vengeance had backfired spectacularly. Her chosen instruments of revenge were broken, and her enemy was now stronger and more secure than ever before. Her last hope had been extinguished on a distant battlefield. With his northern border secured, Odoacer turned his attention back to Ravenna, where the boy Emperor Romulus Augustulus and his mother awaited their fate. There was no army left to protect them. The gates of the capital were opened, and Odoacer entered not as a conqueror, but as the new master of Italy. Barbaria must have expected a brutal end, a sword for her and her son, the final bloody chapter in her quest for revenge. But what happened next surprised everyone. Odoacer, the so-called barbarian, showed a moment of unexpected clemency. When he stood before the young Romulus Augustulus, he didn't see an emperor or a rival. He saw a child, a pawn in a game he had already won. Perhaps he was struck by the boy's youth, or perhaps he simply saw no threat in him. Instead of executing the last Roman emperor, Odoacer did something unprecedented. He deposed him. He took the imperial insignia and sent them to the Eastern Roman emperor in Constantinople, declaring that one emperor was enough. And what of Romulus and his mother Barbaria? Odoacer exiled them. He sent them to a grand villa in Campania, near Naples, and granted them a generous annual pension. The boy who was once emperor lived out his days in quiet obscurity. The woman who had demanded a massacre was left to live with the ghosts of her failure. Her rage had accomplished nothing but the death of more allies. Her enemy had won, and in a final, ironic twist, had shown her a mercy she would have never shown him. The story of the last Roman empress is a dark and cautionary tale. It's a story of how personal grief and a thirst for revenge can lead to catastrophic consequences. Barbaria, driven by loss, tried to unleash a wave of violence that would have drowned Italy in blood. But her plot failed, and she was condemned to a fate perhaps worse than death. A long life of quiet irrelevance, forced to watch the man she hated rule the kingdom she believed was hers. History often focuses on the grand battles and political shifts, but sometimes the most powerful forces are the human emotions of love, grief, and a devastating desire for revenge. Thank you so much for watching. This lesser-known story from the fall of Rome shows just how complex and personal history can be. If you found this tale as fascinating as I did, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more hidden stories from the past. Don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss an episode. See you next time.